Hi, everybody. Hi there.
Hi, Tony. Tony, I've said this to you before. It's a great book full of the insights that only someone with your career can really give to entrepreneurs and people who want to build business. You call it an advice encyclopedia, a mentor in a box. Tell our audience a little bit about what was your aim for the readers, what you want people to take from it.
Well, first, thanks everyone for joining us and thanks for listening in. As far as build goes, it's been something that I've been pondering for about 15 years now. I've been bugged by a friend of mine who's also a book agent saying you need to write a book, but I never wanted to just write a memoir or a autobiography or something like that. About 3 years ago, after been noodling on this idea, I woke up and just thought, how did I get here? Like, I'm thinking, wow, this is such a beautiful life. Well, how did I get here? And yeah, of course, there was a lot of work and things along the way, but there were those people, those mentors that I had from when I was the young me to even to today. And those people were there at the time when I really needed them, not with financial gain. They weren't investors, or whatever. They just helped me like the ideas or like what I was working on, what have you. And so I thought about those people and who they are, and I came up with most of them have died. And so at this point, I was like, I think this is time that I'm the mentor. I want to honor them and honor what they've done and how they've helped me, and how can I do it at scale? And putting all of this stuff, this 30, 35 years or longer advice that I've gotten and built on is in the book. Right? And that's what it's really about. It's for anybody I wrote it for me if I was 20 again. What would I want to know? What would I want to learn? But it's really for anybody coming out of high school all the way to somebody who might be thinking about retirement and everything in between. It's really a multi-generational book. It's whether you're building yourself, your career, your business, a product, a company, what have you, or a product inside of a big company. This is supposed to apply to all of those people, either leaders or individual contributors on a team.
There are many stories in the book about your time at Google, your time obviously working with Steve Jobs, but there's one story I want to kind of just touch upon, which is Nest, and the fact that you say it took you 10 years to go from something that you were quite upset about, which is being cold, to finally building the business that you built. Can you tell us a little bit about how you went from that sort of germ of an idea to actually, I need to build this?
Well, it came from pain, the pain of being cold, or the pain of wasting money, right? So in a house in Tahoe, you only go there certain weekends. You're not there all the time. But the house, because it's in certain seasons, it's so cold, you would have to take 24 hours to warm up. So either I could leave the thermostat on all the time, waste all that money in the planetary resources and get there and warm, or alternatively, I'd have to wait 24 hours to get warm again. So I think that, that was the initial pain. And then I started hacking systems together to make it work, and because there was nothing out on the market. And ultimately, 10 years later, no one had innovated yet. And I just said, damn it, I need to do this myself. And I went off and I designed it actually here in Paris, and then worked together with Matt Rogers and co-founded the company that turned out to be Nest. And we shipped it in 2011. So that was one case of a real big painkiller, solving my own personal pain that a lot of people needed, not just me.
And then I guess my question is, how do you translate that into advice? So people come to you and say, oh, I have an idea and I want to build it. How does that translate into, yes, you should build this because obviously you can, or maybe wait. How do you advise people on that front?
It first starts, and this audience knows really well. Are you creating a painkiller or are you creating a vitamin, right? And a lot of people create vitamins. They put a lot of tech bits together and go, oh, isn't that neat? And you're like, yeah, it's neat, but do I really need that? And that's what we were kind of doing at General Magic. We were putting together all this technology that wasn't quite ready yet, and making the iPhone, 15 years too early, when it was more or less a vitamin. It was like, do I need this? I don't even know why I need this. I don't even know what email is or downloadable games. And then, fast forward 15 years later, the iPhone, which was born out of a lot of the ideas of General Magic and a lot of the people actually, became a painkiller, because at that time, 2007, we had Wi-Fi, we had data networks, we knew what email was, we knew what entertainment on the go was and browsing was. We needed to have all of this stuff in one thing, so we were solving pain that people had. So really, it starts with where's the pain, not just something neat, but where's the pain. But more importantly, where's the story that goes with the painkiller to make sure that you're creating something that the market really needs. You're not just creating some painkiller, but it doesn't really resonate with a lot of people. You have to understand how you're reaching that audience and what you're telling them and what you're trying to solve for them.
And I guess this links a little bit to what I want to ask next in terms of that painkiller and the need of the market. In a recent interview with Wired, you've been publicly critical of the metaverse. I think that's very public.
Sure. Yeah, very, very much so. It's
much
virtual
so.
insanity, not virtual reality.
Well, there you have it. and he said something really interesting, which I'm going to quote back at you and for the audience. We have scarce brains, scarce resources, and we should be focusing on fixing problems like the climate crisis and global health. Now, I want to ask you, at what point did this become the focal concern for you in terms of building stuff?
Well, I watched what happened in 2008 and 2010 with Nest. So in 2008, when the debt crisis happened, it was right when Green Tech 1.0 or Climate Tech 1.0 was happening. And so the climate crisis, we've always known about it. Companies were starting to work on it. And what happened was we had the debt crisis happen. And at the same time, the social mobile revolution happened for Uber and mobile, Twitter, mobile, Facebook, Instagram, all kinds of those things happened. And so what I watched was this whole business around climate tech, but have the bottom fall out of it. And everyone just started, all this scarce money and resources and brains started chasing social mobile. And not saying that was wrong or anything, but they started chasing it. And the investors pulled back because they were like, I can't fund anything with high capex. And so, okay, we got that. Now we're here at another point where everyone's running off talking about the metaverse and spending tens of billions, hundreds of $billions of a metaverse. The climate crisis wasn't solved. It's existential. The metaverse doesn't solve any pain, but the climate crisis does. And I don't want that distraction, just like what happened in 2008 to happen, because people are like, I don't want to fund Nest. That's a green tech business. No one wants to touch green tech. That's just not popular or where the money's going. Yeah. So to drain away all of this attention from something that is life-threatening, humanity-threatening on this planet, and we know we have the problem, and people are going and distracting themselves and putting themselves in, refrigerated boxes with goggles on to go and dance and socially connect, and we're funneling all this money into it. For what reason? We're not going to have a planet. Forget VR. If you don't have a planet, you're not going to have VR when you're on the planet. We're not going to Mars. I hate to tell you everything. But why don't we start working on things together?
I'm sure you can hear the applause. People do agree.
I love it. I love augmented reality, especially for this. I love augmented reality technology and VR technology. I put on Google Glass. I was part of a team to reboot Google Glass in its second generation. When I put on AR goggles, and I could be doing something. Let's say I'm doing homework, but for this crowd, let's say I'm doing surgery. Okay, I'm doing surgery and I have these goggles on, and I'm having an issue, and I can sit here and tap in an expert who comes in and can see what I see through my glasses and help say, hey, I see this. What's going on there? Did you look at this? That is incredibly powerful. Yeah. That's a great use of AR, and there's VR technologies like that as well, but not the metaverse. We're supposed to socially connect. That's just, I'm sorry, virtual insanity. Just let's move on.
There we go. So you mentioned that you are in Paris, and obviously you are now you founded an investment and advisory company called Future Shape. Tell our audience a little bit about that. How do you describe it? So
Future Shape, what we call ourselves is mentors with money. We don't have any LPs or any third parties involved. It's just our family money. And we've invested in over 200 companies around the globe focused on disruptive technologies to solve the climate crisis, to solve social issues, as well as health issues. So we focus on those companies who are going to bring solutions in that area. And it could take 7, 10, 12 years. Those entrepreneurs doing tough stuff before the investment, powers that be decide that it's in fashion. So we invested in plant-based meat. We invested in a company called Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat back in 2014, 2013, before it was all the rage now. Right now it's the rage and everyone's jumping in, but we get involved well before it becomes what's glamorous, in the larger sense. So we try to work with those types of entrepreneurs and help them build the stories and help them with their communications plans to be able to make sure they can take their mission and affect the broadest part of the planet as they can.
And obviously one of the verticals is medical diagnostics in pharma. Tell us a little bit about how do you scout for trends in health tech?
So on health tech, it's tough. There are a lot of different solutions out there or potential solutions. What we look at, like when we go into pharma, we don't look at one drug candidate. People are like retargeting one drug and we're going to have this one drug. No, we look for platform companies that have technology that enable better drug selection, whether that's retargeting or new drugs. We look at people who are trying a lot of stuff with software simulations and robotic-based labs and those things to really bring the technology to allow them to scale their resources to do a much wider range of either drug discovery or drug testing, what have you. So we don't want to just invest in any one drug. We want to invest in platforms that can then create many, many more things over time.
Can you tell us a little bit? We spoke last time about some of your investments in that sector. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
So there's all kinds of ones. I'm trying to figure out which ones I can actually talk about because some of them I can't talk about yet. We're in a company that's doing cancer vaccines.
Okay.
So we have a cancer vaccine, and it's a platform company, and it's out of Boston and Ghent, Belgium, and they're doing cancer vaccines for liquid and solid cancers. That's called Orionis.
Yeah.
We're in another company called Evanetics. It's doing long chain DNA synthesis, very long chain, 10,000, 100,000 base pairs. We have another one doing epigenetic protein sequencing, protein to protein interactions, single molecule protein interactions. We have sensors, health sensors companies. The list could go on. We have at least 30 or 40 investments in the space, things doing stuff with next generation, enzyme technology. I can't go into all the, unfortunately, a lot of it's still secret, so.
Okay, well, you gave us quite a lot. And in your book, for instance, you say that you talk about the customer journey as key to you. So when someone shows you a prototype, first thing you say is, don't tell me what's so special about this object, tell me why do we need it in the first place? How do you apply that to healthcare in particular?
Well, there's a whole rash of startups that are coming out with health-based wearables, whether that's for consumers or B2B. And I try to keep saying, look, stop focusing on this piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Focus on the entire experience, the entire customer journey, as well as if it's a B2B product, what's the recommender's journey? Like, let's say it's a doctor or it's a hospital system. How do they fit it in their workflow? Too many people just focus on the one product and they're like, oh, look at all these benefits. I'm like, talk to me about all those steps of friction to get it adopted by a hospital or by a health system or by an insurance. Show me that you've really thought about all these other things. Don't just give me a little model and go, isn't this great? There's so many other details you have to fit into to make sure that's a success. So too many people get enamored by that little object, but they forget about all of the other things around it. So I want to make sure I'm working with entrepreneurs who are looking at all those other intangible details, turning them into making them tangible, because then I know that we're not just doing things for, to make this really cool thing. We're trying to really make the mission happen from a business point of view. And so I really push people to stop fixating on just these little kind of prototype objects that may not even work.
And I guess in health tech, there's a lot of, obviously, scientists, medical doctors, clinicians, and a lot of them, the migration into a startup, and it's not an easy one sometimes. How do you actually bring innovation out of those places, the hospitals, the universities, the research labs? Is there what's your advice, or what's the guidance that you give to scientists who want to start something?
Well, the first thing is make sure you're working with a leader who understands what it means and how it's different when you have new technologies or new products that are very different than the existing products inside the company. That leader has to understand that they have to treat those little baby projects like a baby. They need nurturing, care, and feeding. They can't just go into the big organization and assume they're going to thrive. Mm-hmm. Most people are like, they have other priorities. They have the other things. I'm always used to taking a small little team, of multidisciplinary team, not putting it inside the silos inside the big company. Even if they work well together, it still gets lost in the noise. Making sure these things become this small little team that has the right set of resources, but most likely the leader on top, all the way at the top. So if this little team, if it's that strategically important to the company, that leader then goes and tells the rest of the company, I'm watching over this. When they need something, help them. This is how the iPod came into being, right? It was because there was Apple at the time only had the Mac. No one wanted to do anything but the Mac. How is the iPod going to exist? And the iPod was going to exist by the mere fact that it was brought into life, not just because we could technically make it work, but we could organizationally make it work because it was seen as something very special and everyone knew it, and that you needed to help and you couldn't stand in its way. And I think that most leaders, especially the ones in the big companies, have to understand that, and they have to guard those innovations they hold near and dear, and make sure they watch over them just like they would a newborn baby.
Okay. Yeah. Well, another thing you said recently, or not so recently, but you did say that the Nest would never happen if you hadn't left the echo chamber of Silicon Valley. You're in Paris now. You're addressing an audience in London. What do you say to people who come to you, entrepreneurs, and they say, how do you make it in Silicon Valley? How can I go there and build something? What do you say to those people?
Well, the way I look at it is very simply the 10 years, 20 years ago, especially 20, but maybe up to 10. There are brilliant brains everywhere. There are problems and painkillers that need to be created everywhere on this planet. But 10, 20 years ago, what we didn't have everywhere was money and technology. Brilliant brains were everywhere. We now have technology because of the app economy, of the open source initiatives, of the server side things. There are so many different technologies that are now accessible to everyone around the world. So you don't have to go to Silicon Valley to be the one and only place where you can learn those things. Okay. And third, the investors themselves, they know the investment community all around the world has woken up. Look at how many unicorns are new inside of the UK, inside of France, just over the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. This is real. You don't have to just go to Silicon Valley to get it done. You can do this anywhere now, and the world's woken up. Silicon Valley will always have its place in the world, but it's no longer a monopoly of all of the money and ideas and the technology. You can make it happen, and that's why we invest all around the world. We have investments on 4 continents. And I can see those entrepreneurs and I talk to them just as if they were working in Silicon Valley. It's amazing how brilliant these people are and the experiences they have. You just have to realize that, at the end of the day, this has been democratized, and do not just think you have to go to somewhere like Silicon Valley to make your mission come true.
That makes sense. I'm going to open it to the audience now, because they're sending me a lot of questions, as obvious.
Sure.
The best one is I think it's something that you've touched upon a few years ago. If the best solutions are painkillers, do innovators have a responsibility to prevent addiction to great solutions?
I think they have. I think all innovators, anybody who's creating technology, we all understand that technology is neutral. It's what humans do with it can become good or bad. Drones can come and bring medical supplies into a war zone, or it could actually drop bombs in a war zone. So it's not the technology is the issue, it's what humans do with it. And a lot of times we can sometimes we can predict what's going to happen and try to head it off at the pass. But a lot of times there are unintended consequences we had no idea that would show up. When those unintended consequences come up and rear their heads, you need, as the creator, or even if you're not in charge of maintaining it anymore, speak up and get vocal about it and make sure that the powers that be know of the issues and that you hold them accountable for it, because that's the only way we're going to make change is by showing it. But we can't just have analysis paralysis that every new technology, we have to think about all the downsides, because if we have all of the downsides, we'll never get any of the upsides. So we have to go and fight those unintended consequences if and when they do happen. And we can't just sit back and let them go, but we also have to keep innovating and moving forward.
Yeah. Another question from the audience. If you could give, I'm not sure if you have this sort of local knowledge, but if you could give one piece of advice to the Secretary of State for Health here in the UK, let's generalize. If you could give advice to Secretary of State for Health anywhere in terms of digital health innovation and adoption, what would that be?
More preventative care, and two, the customers, the clients, the patients, they should own their data.
Okay.
And they should have full access to their data. So it's those two things that are really important. More preventative care, more tools for preventative care, and access to their data so they can take it wherever they want and make it easy to find experts who can help.
Two topics we spoke about already today. A final question, and really just to ask you, there are many entrepreneurs here in the audience, many people who are thinking of starting companies, who are probably in the process of, what would be your final piece of advice for them?
If you're not failing, you're not trying. So you need to understand that, the reason why you can be an entrepreneur and why the world of entrepreneurialism, is so attractive and so amazing when you go through that journey, is because you're building something the world's never seen before. And so if you're building something, you're going to find things that no one could have predicted. And don't let that stop you. If you're scared by that stuff, it probably means that you're doing something that really matters, because no one else has done it. No one can help you with it. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail as long as you keep going and learning from it. Of course, you have to worry about, you can't be dumb and spend too much money or hire too many people and do all these things because you're feeding your ego. But if you really are on a mission that matters, understand that you will fail along the way. Just don't stop, because failure is when you stop, not when you learn from it and keep going. And so if you don't have those butterflies in your stomach every day that you're innovating, you're either not paying attention or you're not trying hard enough.
Tony, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure once again, and congratulations on the book.